on this episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists.
So the whole goal really started with the podcast, speaking to that student who is maybe just now becoming interested in dental hygiene. They're wondering what that process is like. How do I get in? How do I succeed once I'm there? And also making sure that I show them what's possible. I've worked in 3 different dental hygiene schools, if that gives you any perspective. So I feel like I've seen a lot of different things. And something that was very, very obvious to me from all institutions was, we have to prepare for the potential dismissal of a student well in advance. And we have to have all this paperwork and document, even though we know we're not ready. And then we submit it all, and they will probably still be in the program and make it through graduation. And that's hard. And like I said, that's the student I'm here to help. Is like, you're the one that's struggling, you're failing, right? Like, we need to make smart decisions because there's going to come a time where you're going to be tested on your abilities, and you need to be able to pass. And everyone needs to know, like, you're safe to treat these patients.
Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of two hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of two hygienists.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists podcast, episode number 502. I'm your host, Andrew Johnston, and thank you so much for being with us today. In this episode, we welcome Dana Paladino to the show. Dana is, she's impressive. It's probably the best word for it. Not only is she incredibly smart, but she's actively working towards making that next generation of dental hygienists just that much better, making sure they're starting off on the right foot. And as someone who interviews and has hired a bunch of hygienists, many of them new grads, I'm very thankful for people like her because I've been seeing some trends with these newer grads that I didn't see years and years ago. Sometimes it feels there's a disconnect, and I'm not really sure exactly what it is, but it almost feels sometimes that they're not even sure if they want to be in the profession, but they know that there's money and there's demand, so they push through, and then maybe they're not happy with their choices. And so someone like Dana serving them to prepare them even before they're going to school to make sure that their expectations are met and make sure they understand the profession. This is huge. This is exactly what we need. And so I'm very thankful for her. So thank you to Dana for her time on this episode. You're going to love it. And here's the interview.
A tale of two hygienists.
All right, listeners, welcome into the interview portion of the podcast. We're joined today by Dana Paladino. Dana, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh my goodness. This is such a buzz. We're on the floor of RDH Under One Roof here in Dallas. First of all, how many years have you come to RDH Under One Roof?
Okay, I'm a first timer, so this is a very exciting experience for me. Yes.
Good for you. Congrats.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so did you attend the first timer event?
I did, yes, with all the other first timers.
I heard there's 1,000 first timers here.
No way.
That's why they didn't all go to that event.
Well, I was going to say, I was like, I don't think that the capacity
they
was
all
there.
couldn't fit in that one.
Yeah.
But, okay. So this event is pretty amazing. Next year, everyone is going to be in Washington, D.C. I think it's actually National Harbor, not D.C., but we'll be back there again. I think this will be my 3rd time maybe going to that one. I hope you can make it to D.C. If you do, we're going to set you up in the podcast lounge again.
Okay,
as a
awesome.
returner.
Let's do it. Yes,
So
I plan to be there.
Yeah, listeners, Dana is a podcaster. She's absolutely amazing. What's the name of your podcast?
Dental Hygiene Basics.
Dental Hygiene Basics. So our audience primarily is not going into dental hygiene school any longer. It's in their rearview mirror quite a bit. But can you talk a little bit about like what you are trying to achieve? Like, what is your whole entire platform about?
Absolutely. So I'm a dental hygienist, been a dental hygienist for 10 years. I learned in dental hygiene school that you could be a dental hygiene educator. And that blew my mind because I did not know what was possible in a career in dental hygiene.
What did you think was the pathway to becoming an educator?
I didn't even think in my head. I was thinking, I'm going to become a dental hygienist and I'm going to be a clinical dental hygienist. Like that was all I knew about the role of a hygienist. So then I got there and I see my teachers teaching dental hygiene. And I was like, why did I never think that was a career path? I have no idea. But it really just opened up my world and I realized I have a passion for education. So I worked clinically for 5 years, knowing that when I hit the 5-year mark, I was making my exit to go teach. And I love education, and that's what I've been doing ever since. But during my time in education, I had some students that really struggled, and it was really emotionally taxing on me. And I kept asking myself, how do I help them? How do I help them? I taught pre-clinic, and so I was with them from the very beginning, and I just kept thinking if I can get ahead of the problem, I can prevent them from struggling so much in
Yeah.
dental hygiene
Yeah.
school. Well, I was moving to a different city and we were my husband's job was taking us to a new city, and so I was like, "Okay, I'm exiting formal education. What is next for me?" And I woke up in the middle of the night and I was like, "I'm going to do a podcast." And it was like, "I've got the business. I'm going to help students get into and succeed in hygiene school." So the whole goal really started with the podcast speaking to that student who is maybe just now becoming interested in dental hygiene. They're wondering what that process is like. How do I get in? How do I succeed once I'm there? And also making sure that I show them what's possible. So
Sure.
I love to get guests on the show and make sure that we talk about all these different career opportunities that are available for a hygienist because I know there's going to be a student out there that sees themselves in one of my guests.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have so many questions about all of this because as someone who does hire a fair amount of people over the last 5 years or so, a vast majority of them have been new grads. At the same time, I am seeing, not necessarily from our groups, but from other groups, when those new grads hit like the 2 year mark or even sometimes the 6 month mark, they are like, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. I want to exit the profession. Now, is this, do you think, an indictment on the profession as it stands now? Or do you think it's like because they don't have someone like you that's reaching out to them early enough to show them this is what the profession actually is and is not meeting their expectations?
Yeah, I think a lot of that goes into it. You know, you mentioned on my podcast, we just recorded an episode, which was great. And you mentioned that you did the required 20 hours of shadowing, but you didn't know the questions to ask. You didn't.
Oh, way to sell me out to my own
My
listeners.
bad, my
Great.
bad, guys.
Okay, now.
Okay, obviously he
No, sorry.
figured out the questions to ask as he went along, and
Yeah,
obviously,
totally was the best at observing.
yeah. But I was the same. I
Yeah,
didn't know
yeah,
what
yeah.
questions to ask, and I didn't know what dental hygiene school was going to be like, and I also didn't realize both the soft and hard skills that were going to be necessary to succeed going into it. And I think that when you start to share that information earlier, and when you start to hear it from someone who loves dental hygiene as much as I do, and all of my guests that are on the show, I think what I'm trying to do is build that community of hygienists supporting hygienists and really starting to infuse that in our younger generations who are
Absolutely.
coming up who are going to replace us at some point. And
Yeah.
I hope that they have the same level and passion that I do so that it translates into their career. And I think the other thing too is, because now we're starting to see more of what dental hygienists can do, especially on social media. You see all the avenues and different things that hygienists are doing. Yes, I think some people want to get out of the op because they're burnt out, they're tired. I've been there, I've felt that. I totally get it. But at the same time, I think it's really nice to see, well, maybe I do need a break from the op for a while. Where can I go next? And kind of reignite that passion for dental hygiene.
Do you think that well, because in your role, you have two perspectives, and we'll try and like walk the line. You can say it from both perspective or whatever, or just overall impressions. But when a hygienist comes into the program, do you feel like it is like their biggest obstacle is like the hand skills portion, the mechanical portion, or is it the time management portion that burns them out and makes them hate school? Is there an emotional component that I'm not thinking about? Is it the just workload? Like, where are we finding that students are struggling the most?
Yeah. Can we say all of the above?
Well, yeah, that's if you want to take the easy way out,
Yeah,
sure.
no, actually, I think it's very student specific.
Okay.
From what I've seen as an educator, it may be that you're stronger in clinic and you're struggling in didactic, or you're doing well in didactic, but you're struggling in clinic. That was me. Like great at the coursework, theory. I was like boom, 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 and then I step in the clinic and I'm like, I wasn't even sure if I was holding the instrument. I'm like, is this in my hand right now? And then there's some that struggle with both, right? And then you add in all of those external pressures, mental health, finances, pressures from, may have family, you have things like that you're juggling. And so, dental hygiene school, it exists in a vacuum while it doesn't at the same time, right? It's such a unique educational experience that it can be hard to put your finger on what they're going to struggle with before they get there, which is a big part of why, I tried to reverse engineer and get back before they even get there and have those conversations of, have you struggled in school? Have you been diagnosed with a learning disability? Do you know what accommodations are? Because like I said, every student is so unique. It's hard to put it all in just one box with what they struggle with the most. But one thing I do think that we're struggling with as a society, and we're seeing it more and more, I do a lot of work with, I say my key demographic is the struggling student, right? Struggling to get in, struggling in their education, struggling to pass boards. That's where I come in and help fill those gaps. But one thing that I've noticed, the board failure rate has gone up. I mean, it's just tick, 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 tick. We're starting to see a slight downturn, and I'm trying to tell the students, empower them. I'm like, y'all need to make the decision, right? Like, we're going to work together to bring this failure rate down. But I think a big thing is that we're losing some of that critical thinking ability with the between COVID, which messed us all up, but also with Google AI, all of these amazing things out there that you don't have to think about something. You just ask the question and the question is answered. So I think we see a little bit of struggles in that regard too. Students are struggling with, how do I learn? How do I critically think? And it's always been an issue for students, and you develop a lot of that in hygiene school. But I think that the students and the educators are really struggling to connect to those dots right now.
It's interesting that you say that about the failure rates, because at the same time, we have overwhelmingly gotten rid of the patient-based model. And I understand like the ethical concerns that people have raised, partial care for the patient, things like that. Do you think that there's a component to that where it's, I don't want to say it was easier on patients, but I mean, like, what else, what's the other variable? I mean, other than, if it's not that, then is it the quality of the student? Not necessarily about like the critical thinking skills, but like confidence or ability or contact time with real patients. Like, what is happening to create this?
I should have been more specific. So the failure rate that I'm referring to is the written national
Oh,
board, the
okay.
educational component. So the connecting the dots
Gotcha,
with those
gotcha.
deep critical thinking and the way that some things are worded on the exam, or because I tutor students who have been unsuccessful, a lot of times they come to me and they're like, "You really have to know the material." And I was like, it's a very surprising statement for me as an educator. I'm like, of course you have to know the material,
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
to
yeah.
pass the exam. But they're seeing it in ways they've never seen it before, and that critical thinking component is a big struggle for a
Gotcha.
lot of students. Now, moving out of the patient exam right into the mannequin based exam, there are a lot of pros and cons to each. It's like you train them on patients this whole time, and then you turn around and you test them on a mannequin. At the same time, the mannequin removes some of the variables that you and I didn't have to
But they're
deal
gonna
or
show
did have
up.
to deal
The
with. Yes.
medicine's gonna show
Yes,
up.
the mannequin is always there. It doesn't have high blood pressure. It has the
That's
calculus.
exactly
It
it.
has the probe depths. It has
Yeah.
what you need to be successful, which I think is a nice thing. And I do think it takes some stress off of the students. But as you said, it's not really mimicking real life either. But I still am a huge fan of third party evaluations for our dental hygiene students, because I also think it helps to hold the schools accountable as well. I've worked in many situations where I was a new educator and I did not always know exactly what I was doing. That sounds awful, but we've all been in that
Of
seat,
course we have.
right? I was a clinician. I was not a teacher. So, and I had to learn a lot of things and go back and kind of refresh my memory on certain concepts. And the only way to know if I'm doing a good job is if my students are passing these exams. Now I know some people are going to listen to that and maybe, get a little upset because they're like, no, we do a great job teaching. And I know like the passion is there to create a top tier, high level, exceptional clinician, but programs go through changes, and during those changes, sometimes people are stepping into new roles that they're not 100% ready for. And it can show in the students. And I speak that from experience, right? And that's how we grow and get better as educators. So I think that I still like that third party exam. I still like the hands on, aspect of it, because it is the gatekeeper of our
Sure,
profession.
sure. And the listeners of this show, they've heard me say it, 1,000 times. I'm also a big proponent of that, because I sat in a position where I had to, I was tasked with keeping the public safe. That was my only responsibility in that role, was how do I keep the public safe? And I don't think that it should be up to the people that do the education to also evaluate in that same way for public safety concerns, not
Yeah.
necessarily just passing of, didactic or clinical.
And there's a lot of potential bias there as well. We
Mhm.
become very close to these students over the course of 2 years. And if you're the only one that's evaluating them and saying that they're good to go,
It's a stamp on you kind of too, like, I'm good at what I do, it's like,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
if you have to fail them, you're like, "Well, maybe I didn't do my job," even though you probably did, right? Like, that's the
yes.
thing, it's a hard position to put somebody, and it's not really fair to put those educators in that position, honestly.
Yeah. The other thing too is a lot of institutions are changing. They're
Mm.
becoming more like businesses.
Yeah.
And a lot of the hygiene educators struggle and feel like they don't have the autonomy that they used to within the program to make the decision. Is the student actually ready to graduate? And are they where they need to be for the safety of the public? However, it's very difficult to get a student who's not ready, and to say it in the nicest terms, to say, hey, maybe you need to start back over next year. Even if they fail classes, they can appeal, they can do remediation. There's a lot of things that have come back where the hygiene educators have feel like they've lost some autonomy. And so people are being pushed through the programs. And I'm not saying this happens everywhere, but I've worked in 3 different dental hygiene schools, if that gives you any perspective. So I feel like I've seen a lot of different things. And something that was very, very obvious to me from all institutions was, you know, we have to prepare for the potential dismissal of a student well in advance. And we have to have all this paperwork and document, even though we know we're not ready. And then we submit it all, and they will probably still be in the program and make it through graduation. And that's hard. And like I said, that's the student I'm here to help, is like, you're the one that's struggling, you're failing, right? Like, we need to make smart decisions, because there's going to come a time where you're going to be tested on your abilities, and you need to be able to pass. And everyone needs to know, like, you're safe to treat these patients.
Okay, so let's go now. Those are the struggles of like the new entrant into the hygiene programs. What are the questions? What are the struggles that these? Like, what's the number one question that they always ask you, or is the number one struggle that they always ask you before they get into hygiene school?
When they're looking at entering into the program, this is actually a really funny question, but they always want to know, they're always so scared about finding patients. How do I find patients once I get there? Yeah, they're seeing this because it's a common fear. I mean, when they talk to people, and it's actually when I ask people on my podcast, I say, what's your biggest struggle? They say finding patients, right? That was my hardest part. So actually I get asked that question a lot. How do you find patients in hygiene school? And surprisingly, some people will not go to hygiene school because they have to find their own patients. And they're like,
Really?
that sounds too overwhelming, too scary,
It's
which
easy.
it is.
It's not easy.
Well,
Yeah, I guess every city and every town's different, but
yes, yeah. But I
it
mean,
is.
yeah, if it's your passion, it's what you want to do, you get out there and you find the patient, right? I mean, I was out on the sidewalk giving out cards in front of Walmart, and there's lots of different ways to interact. And I think it made me better at getting to know people and reaching out and,
Yeah.
just trying to kind of build those connections so that they would trust me enough to show up and be in my chair for 4 hours.
Can I tell you how we did it? Just and it's
Yes.
it's not. I don't know about the whole like profiling thing. That's
Yeah.
probably where we're gonna go off the rails here on this podcast. But we went to the Department of Health and Human Services,
Okay.
and we waited. We talked to the people that were there, and we said, "Hey, can we just hang out here as a lobby?" And as people are coming to apply for different things that they need, this is gonna be state assistance things.
Yeah.
We know that the demographic for this is gonna be lower income, so lower access to the care that they should have already had generally.
Right.
Also, probably a lower dental IQ and a prioritization of their financials or whatever.
Yeah.
That's not going to go to the expensive dental products that are out there.
Mhm.
They're going to go to feeding your family
Yes.
and things like that. And so
Exactly.
we know that they're going to have more disease. And so whether we're looking for things, we had requirements for restorative, so putting in different types of fillings, or restore or requirements for perio. This is a great group of people. And all we had to do is then they would let us up a table and we just go out and same thing. We'd hand out cards. And it was safer because we were in this place where people know who they are.
Yes,
Like they are coming in
exactly.
requesting assistance and have to show ID and show these things. And so for, we had a lot of, 19, 20-year-old single women. This is a safe environment in which to find it and a great place to find it. So
That is incredible advice. And I'm so excited that you shared that, because I'm even thinking I grew up in a really small town. And there is a dental hygiene school in the area. And where it's at, it's slightly bigger. So I know that they can probably find patients. But I'm thinking there's a county health department where you go in and people get vaccines and things like that. I'm like, what a great place to show up. And so if you're out in rural Texas, which I'll give a shout out to Coastal Bend College, used to teach there. And, that was a struggle because it is pretty rural location. But I'm like, I know there's got to be a county health department somewhere around there that would be happy to even share the services that the school is providing as well.
what is the main, I mean, I guess, like, how does the economy run in that? Are they remote workers? Or is it agriculture? Like, what is the demographic of the people there?
Yeah, I always say look for the retirees, who are maybe on Medicare or Medicaid, well, not Medicaid, Medicare, but they're looking for some low cost services. And then they also have the time. They get the benefit of the social interaction with the student, right? And I mean, those were always my best
So you know that
patients.
they love that.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And you know that they have that time to dedicate to you. And that's where I always found a lot of success in school. So I always think that's a great market to hit. But yeah, sometimes, I mean, if you're in a school environment, walk around. There are 18, 19, 20-year-olds who maybe don't have insurance or haven't had their teeth cleaned, especially, there's a lot of people out there who have never been to the dentist before. It would surprise you, right? And so I think that really anyone, you just have to I think a big way to be successful in finding patients is just letting them know that they are helping you become what you want to become. And that was always my take. I'm like, you're really doing me a favor.
100%. Let me ask this. Okay, pulling back the curtain just a little bit. You worked in several different institutions, and so without without throwing people under the bus, what is still like what's the biggest gripe that educators have recently as opposed to maybe when I went to school?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I'm going to speak from my own experience. For me, it was the bureaucracy.
Sure.
I see a change that could be made to improve the students, and I can't get it done because of the red tape.
Yeah.
And that's why that was a big proponent of why I stepped out and decided to become an entrepreneur, because I was like, I have ideas and thoughts and I want to make things better, but people just keep telling me no. And I just, that is what drove me personally crazy. And I know it is a problem. And, sometimes too, the support that you need from the higher ups in this school, right? That,
The non-dental people, the people that don't actually understand
yeah.
maybe the program itself.
And some things too, you're like, we need to push, laser, or we need to be teaching different things that we know the students are going to experience when they graduate. Even intraoral cameras. I worked in one school where we got intraoral cameras for every student. I go to another school and they were like, we'll give you two, and we're like, what? It's an intraoral camera. Like, you can get them for super cheap nowadays. And just looking at things like that, it's like, the different level of bureaucracy and trying to navigate your way through that. And then I think also a lot of these schools are putting more work on the dental hygiene faculty, especially if you're working in a university. I know we were getting pulled over to the dental school all the time and love to help the dental students, happy to do it, but it was coming at you have to cut your time somewhere. And so it's like, well, what gets cut, what doesn't? And then, the more you put on your plate, the more sacrifices are being made in other places. And I think that was really, really hard too. So it's always just, not enough time in the day to get
Yeah.
things done, and then the things you wanna get done, are gonna be beneficial, someone's usually gonna tell you no. That's
Yeah.
the hard part. Yeah.
I'm gonna have you turn around and look at these two folks in the
Yes!
sweet things.
I saw
So
them.
shout out to the Let's Get Oral podcast. They are dressed to the nines over here with all their gear. They look awesome. Hopefully we can grab a picture of them at some point and we'll post it on our social media. But if you haven't listened to their podcast before, it is everything I was hoping a podcast would be in, hard hitting science, but let's be silly, a little bit maybe racy sometimes.
I love that.
And maybe just unabashedly just honest about things. And so shout out to them. They just walked by. Okay, so let me just end this with maybe a very complex question.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay. I want to know your thoughts on and how it would get done. Because you just touched on the fact that sometimes we work with our dentists and things like this in dental schools. Derek Sven is pushing this thing. It's happened in Europe for a long time, but it's the idea of jumping on kind of like the train of dental, right? So you jump on, you were an assistant before, right? So you get on the train and you do all of your requirements for dental assisting. Every assistant across the nation does exactly the same pathway on this train. Everyone gets trained to the highest part of the scopes of practice, whether or not they need it or not, but everyone is required to do this one. And then they can jump off and they can say, I'm going to be a dental assistant. This is what we're going to do. Or they can ride the train to the next stop and say, okay, we're going to be dental hygienists. And dental hygienists are also taught exactly the same way across the nation to the highest of scope of whatever state has the highest scope of practice.
I love that.
Whether or not you're using it or not, doesn't matter. We're still taught it. We're educated on it and we pass. I both love third-party objective examinations, some form of that, right? Okay, everyone, and they all pass their restorative, and they all pass their local anesthesia written and their clinical and all that kind of stuff. And and we're all the same. We're all the same. And if you want to be a dentist, keep on going. Oh, maybe dental therapist would be a first stop. If dental therapy is a thing that gets embraced at a larger scale, dental therapist and then dentist.
Yeah.
What do you think about that notion? For me, I'll be honest, I love it because that way we all know what we're all doing and we're all on the same page of things, and we don't be like, hey, hygienists don't know jack crap. They know that we know stuff. But what is your thought on that? Is there any obstacles? How could we implement that?
I mean, it all sounds fantastic. I think it's very hard to implement just because of the current structure that we have right now. But, when you think about that big picture, it's like if you've been an assistant and then you become a hygienist, it's like what that assistant is capable of, what they do, and why they're so vital to the team. And then when you get to the hygienist aspect, again, if you're a dentist and you've never been a hygienist, you really, until you've lived a day, walked a day in someone's shoes, you
Right.
really don't know. And the same is true from a hygienist to a dentist, right?
Absolutely.
There's a lot of collision between heads,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of it is just lack of understanding and perspective for one another's careers. Something that I think is really interesting, some programs and, people that I've interviewed on my podcast, they have slightly more expanded dental hygiene programs where they'll apply in. It's almost like you choose your major. And in your early semesters, you're taking like oral anatomy 1, intro to dental hygiene, while you're also taking your other courses
Oh,
too. Right. So
interesting.
you're
I love
taking maybe
that.
your algebra or your nutrition, but at the
Yeah.
same time, you're getting that entry level introduction.
Mhm.
Now, we know people love to change their majors. Sometimes you're like, I thought that's what I wanted and I didn't. You get off the train and
Absolutely.
you have not purchased instruments, you haven't spent time buying
Yes.
loops, and then realize too late in the game. So I do love a pathway that helps students to see, again, what's possible, and then also gives them that early introduction before they have to make that full term commitment. And I
Yeah.
really think something where going from assisting to hygiene, and right now there are some paths that are like that. Some schools have that path, which I think is great. Would it be even more amazing if it could transition into where now we've already got that path, and a lot of the associates programs do that, right? Like you'll go through the assisting, and then you'll get your associates in hygiene, and then they may have a direct connection with another university where you can get your bachelor's. So then it's like, well, then what's the next step? Why are we not funneling these hygienists who we know would make exceptional dentists into that career field? I think that it would be a wonderful thing. And I think that's probably where it would have to start, making those connections and creating a pathway for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I feel like all of the problems that we have in dental aren't really about turf wars like everyone wants to say. I think
Yeah,
it's about communication.
I
I
agree.
think it's almost all about communication and understanding, right? Like we aren't explaining ourselves well enough to doctors and saying, "Hey, Dennis, this is what we actually do know." They aren't being communicated to at the dental school level of like, "Hey, trust your hygienist, love your hygienist, embrace them. Here's their full scope of practice."
Yeah.
State dependent.
Yes.
And then, which is also another thing we need to figure
Oh
out, but
gosh,
that's a
yeah.
whole other thing. Anyways, thank you for being here. You're super insightful. I love what you're doing. Thank you, by the way, for helping me be able to hire a better, more qualified hygienist coming out of school because they're being better prepared on the front end. If anyone want to check out your podcast, if they want to reach out to you for any questions, where can they go?
Absolutely. So the podcast is Dental Hygiene Basics. You can follow me on socials at Dental Hygiene Basics. And then my website is dentalhygienebasics.com.
Buddy, thank you for being here.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate it.
Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of two hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of two hygienists.